The American Association of University Women advances gender equity for women and girls through advocacy, education, and research with a special focus on pay equity leading to economic security. The League of Women Voters is a national nonpartisan political organization open to all citizens, both men and women. It is committed to inform and active participation of citizens in government. Neither organization supports nor opposes any candidates. Thank you for watching this forum brought to you by the AAUW, League of Women Voters, and Midland Community TV.
Welcome to the 2020 School Board Candidate Forum for the Midland Public Schools, co-sponsored by the Midland branch of the American Association of University Women and the Midland Area League of Women Voters. The American Association of University Women advances gender equality for women and girls through advocacy, education, and research with a special focus on pay equity leading to economic security. The League of Women Voters is a national nonpartisan political organization open to all citizens, both men and women. It is committed to the informed and active participation of citizens in government. Neither organization supports nor opposes candidates. I am Judith Cox of the Midland branch of the American Association of University Women, commonly called by its acronym AAUW, and I will serve as moderator tonight. Jane Worth, member of both AAUW and the League of Women Voters, will be our official timekeeper. This is one of two forums for the Midland Public School Board candidates. Look for a second forum with the three candidates vying for the two 6-year positions. We are pleased to meet and hear from the four candidates vying for two 4-year positions from the Midland Public School Board. I want to welcome the candidates Lynne Baker, Betsy Deagle, John Hatfield, and Kurt Yaki. We hope that what you see and hear will help you decide how to vote in the upcoming election on Tuesday, November 3rd. Each of the candidates will have 2 minutes for an opening statement. After all have spoken, I will pose a series of questions. Candidates will be allotted a 90-second response. At the request of any candidate, I will repeat the question on the floor. When time is up, I will stop the speaker, allowing only the completion of a sentence. After the question and answer period, each candidate may give a 1-minute closing statement. The candidates participated in a drawing to determine the order in which they will speak. That order will be maintained and rotated throughout the program. We will begin with the opening statements. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to introduce themselves and give a brief overview of their qualifications and reasons for running. John has been selected to go first. You have the floor for 2 minutes.
Thank you very much. Good evening. My name is John Hatfield, and it's nice to meet everyone. I'd like to extend my thanks to the other candidates, the AAUW Midland Chapter and the Midland League of Women Voters Chapter. I'm a proud parent of 2 MPS students who both attend Dow High. I've had the opportunity to see our outstanding educators in action since our children have entered school. My family values education, and my wife Marcy and I are working to instill the same values in our children. I grew up in the suburbs of Chicago, graduated from Kenyon College, and earned my MBA from Kellogg School of Management at Northwestern University. I relocated to Midland in 2007 to take a job at Chemical Bank as the Director of Marketing, where I worked until 2017. Since that time, I've been working at the Axia Institute in Midland, which is part of MSU. I'm running for this position because I believe I can bring a new perspective to the MPS board. I'm confident that I have the experience and commitment necessary to make a positive impact on our school system. I've been involved with a number of school-related activities, and I've had the opportunity to serve on a number of boards since I've been in town. This board service has helped me observe how the most effective boards operate and the governance they provide. The most effective boards I've been on share a diversity of thought and perspectives, and I believe I would bring these perspectives to the MPS board. If elected, I'd like to focus on the following priorities. First, continuing to narrow the achievement gap between high and low performing students. Secondly, ensuring that all students have the support resources necessary to cope during these uncertain times is critical. We also need to ensure that our facilities across the district are poised to meet the academic and extracurricular needs of our students for today and the future. Finally, MPS needs to ensure it's living by its commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion in its words and its actions. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Lynn, you may now introduce yourself.
Alrighty. Good evening. I am Lynne Baker, and thank you to all of you for inviting us to this forum tonight. I am the mom of 5 MPS graduates, and I have served on the board for a number of years now. And education is my passion. I actually have a teaching degree, and I've been a longtime volunteer in the schools by going in and doing dibbles, reading groups, and working with the PYP 5th grades, amongst a lot of other things when my kids were in school. And education truly is my passion. If I am elected to be on the board once again, I would love to continue to be a champion for Midland Public Schools and their strong curriculum, their community involvement, and their continual emphasis on changing. We don't stay stagnant. We look at what's best for all kids and for our schools and our staff, and we make that commitment to make our education even better. We rank at about the top 4 or 5% in the state, so we do a fantastic job. But as John said, there is a gap, and we need to be able to close that gap and meet all kids' needs, from the lower end all the way to those very, very high achievers. We have been very proud to be able to improve our facilities, and thankful that the community passed our bond about 5 years ago. And those that have been able to get into the buildings, you can see that we are on cutting edge, trying to be on cutting edge with technology, and our building safety, and continuing lots of professional development for our staff, especially now during these COVID days. Education is looking a little bit different, as we all know, but we do not want to give up our standard of excellence. Thank you.
Thank you. Betsy, you may now introduce yourself.
Thank you, everyone. My name is Dr. Betsy Deagle, and I'm pleased to be here to be able to discuss my candidacy tonight. I am seeking election because I have a skill set that can provide immediate contributions. As an educator, scientist, and active volunteer in MPS, as well as our surrounding community, during this extremely pivotal point in our nation as well as education system. I am an ambitious, innovative, collaborative leader who demonstrates integrity and passion when working with diverse groups of faculty, staff, and students to achieve positive outcomes. These skills will fill a niche on the current board, thus evoking more impact in setting policy and moving forward. Plus, I love Midland Public Schools. The most important role I do have in life, though, is being a parent. My husband, Chad, and I have a son who is a 6th grader at Jefferson and a 3rd grade daughter who is a 3rd grader at Woodcrest. They are right in the middle of their educational path at MPS, making this an ideal time for me to step in to give back to this wonderful school district. I am a homegrown, born and raised in the thumb of Michigan, product of a public school system. My dad is a retired superintendent and mother a retired special education teacher. And I learned at a young age the importance of transparency and consistent communication and having a laser focus on students to be successful. My family and I have lived in Midland for the last 9 years, and we truly can't see ourselves anywhere else. Upon election, my objectives upon being elected include sustaining the wonderful MPS quality that we do have with less money, the unknown, and resources, bringing community into the classroom, real life, authentic learning, stronger mentor-mentee relationships from secondary ed to lower ed to instill diversity and inclusion, educational delivery options that others benchmark us on, and always more professional development for teachers. Thank you.
Thank you. Kurt, you may now introduce yourself.
Got it. Good evening. My name is Kurt Yaki, and I am a 47-year volunteer with the Midland Public School system. I started immediately after I graduated from Midland High, and I have been volunteering ever since. In addition to my commitment to the Midland Public Schools for those 47 years, I have extensive experience with boards. I have been counsel to boards. I've been on boards. I'm on 6 boards currently with businesses. And that allows me the opportunity to see the very best of leadership of organizations and at times maybe not the best leadership of organizations. I have financial experience, and I am able to tease out of financial statements what's important. And I think that there are an awful lot of people that have the very best of intentions and want to be helpful to the schools by wanting to be a board member. I think it's very important for the board members, though, to have experience that can understand what it means to run an $81 million business and what it means to acquire true transparency. Pardon me. I have a website, which is midlandschools.com, which I would ask everyone to visit, and they would have a better idea of what it is that I am hoping to do for the Midland schools.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. We will now begin with the questions. Each candidate will have 90 seconds to answer each question, and I will repeat the question at the request of the candidate. For the first question, we will begin with Lynne. Lynne, what are your views regarding a safe return to schools for students and staff, and what basis would you use to determine the need to move to a distance learning only model?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that, please?
Absolutely.
Okay.
So what are your views regarding a safe return to schools for student and staff? And what basis would you use to determine the need to move to a distance learning only model?
Well, first and foremost, I believe kids learn best in the classroom. So I'm proud that MPS has been able to offer 3 different options. However, we need to work very closely with our health department, which we are doing, and we have many safety protocols in place so that we can monitor temperatures, et cetera. And that is a long list of important things that we have put in place, some mandated by the state, some that we have chosen to do just to be extra safe. If we have to go back to distance learning, that would be at the recommendation of our health department. There are a lot of families that prefer the face-to-face or a hybrid. So ultimately, it's what's the safest as far as the health organizations tell us what to do.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Betsy, it's your turn to answer.
Thank you. Sure. Certainly a hot topic today, right? That has all of our, focus on in higher education as well as K-12 education. Point being, when it comes to that return safe to schools, we have to follow the rules, obviously, that are set forth by our state as well as federal government, as well as Lynn mentioned, our health department. But from there, when we look at the rules and we look at how, we can best distribute this to Midland Public Schools, students and families, we have to give people and empower people the options to have choices. And Midland Public does a wonderful job of that. As we've been noted many times, we really are a culture of overachievers. We are family value driven. And I think we've really accomplished that on the fly. And we really, all of us are living day to day and just ready for the next step and how we can embrace change. Truly, as a potential board member, I would want to be visible in the schools, in communication venues and so on. So I, as well as fellow board members, could model the way to see my commitment to staying safe so kids ultimately can benefit in a variety of those learning platforms. We have to have a positive mindset. If we don't, we'll never get from point A to point B. And I think truly, from what I've seen as a parent as well as educator, we are well on our way in offering those diverse options. And again, when it comes to PPE, temperatures, more budgets for online licensures, it's just the beginning. Thank you.
Thank you. Kurt, you now have the floor. Kurt, you're muted.
I spend every day with students of the district at practice because I'm a volunteer coach. And I would say that I'm very much in favor of what the district has done thus far with respect to handling this crisis. The boards of the companies that I'm on, we have done some different things that I might bring to the board and to the district to consider, because I think that there are times when education gets to be a little focused. They don't look outside of their experience to what other entities are doing that could be helpful. The distance-only model is one that I would suggest is a mistake. And I don't think that, based upon my work with the infectious disease people at hospitals, because that's about half of what I do, is work with hospitals and medical device companies, it seems highly unlikely that that would be the recommendation. If it was, to return to the question, I think the district would be able to handle it well because they've already worked on it with I think, decent skill. So to me, I think that this has been well handled so far.
Thank you. And finally, John.
Yeah, thank you very much. I also think the school that MPS has done a very good job with the return to school plan. These are real uncertain times, but as a parent, I appreciate the fact that MPS has given families choices. Whether you're attending in person, whether you're attending, doing a hybrid, or you're doing all online. I think MPS has given families in the district a great opportunities. I personally have one student who is returning, who's in class full time, and I've got another, my daughter is actually doing a hybrid version, and both seem to like the choices that they've made. I would say that if we see an uptick in our infection rate locally over the next, however long, we would need to consult with local health officials and take their advice in making a determination as to whether we needed to go to a distance-only model. But we would do that after we consulted with local health officials and had a better idea of implications going forward. But I do think that MPS is prepared to deliver classes in a distance model if necessary. But obviously, that wouldn't be my first choice. Thank you.
Thank you. For the second question, we will begin with Betsy. Betsy, earlier this summer, over 1,000 students, alums, and community members signed a petition asking that MPS do more to incorporate lessons of systematic racism, privilege, and American history from the Black experience into its ongoing curriculum. What do you think MPS should do in response to this petition, and what changes would you see MPS make in response?
Sure, thank you. I've worked intricately on diversity, equity, and inclusion plans, as well as active committee work to set policy and to create professional responses and reactions towards actions as you just spoke of. I believe MPS is taking actions that are very strategic and collaborative. I admire the work of the current board and team of contributors. I feel the current plan, as well as the new MPS vision, the new MPS proclamation, does promote action and is understandable and simple enough for parents and community members and any stakeholder to adopt. These things are starting to become a norm in all aspects of every community in our world. We need to continue to be intentional and promote the mindset that students and stakeholders can view individual differences as positive and cool and something to be a part of, so everyone can learn from others. Currently, certainly there is more good work to keep pushing forward and to be done. I would like, though, to see and be part of setting policy on a parent community dashboard, as well as instilling a diversity champion at every building that can create transparent communication in anti-discrimination, anti-racial, all of those, so we can bring awareness and infuse anti-racism for everyone.
Thank you. Kurt, it is your turn to answer.
This is quite personal to me because a couple of fellows that I've known for a while quite well became targets. And I frankly was shocked because I didn't believe that in the Midland community that racism was rampant. And I learned quite a bit from the conversations with those fellows about those experiences. And so I would suggest that what's being done is well done to start. I would say that in an unofficial way, this has been done for years because, for example, on the extracurricular activities, people get to know each other way better than they do, I think, sometimes in the classroom. And I think that helps a great deal. So I would say that if the efforts that the district has put forth so far is a good starting place. And I think that the discussion between students and some of those adults that have expertise would be an even better step. And I think I have some ideas about how to handle that.
Thank you. John, it is now your turn to answer.
All right. Thank you very much. Diversity is obviously very near and dear to my heart. I'm very supportive of the DEI plan that Midland has recently released, but I was very disappointed with its tepid introduction. While I'm pleased by some of the steps the board has taken around DEI, I still want to see the district address its curriculum to ensure that it's representative of the experience we want our students to have. We've seen too many instances of racial bullying in MPS over the last few years, and MPS needs to speak in a singular voice when addressing this very important area. Unfortunately, this can be a contentious topic, but our goal should be to make this an easy issue to speak about and support, especially where our students are concerned. How this policy is shared with the student body and enforced is critical. All stakeholders really need to understand why the policy has been introduced, what the policy entails, and the benefits MPS sees in promoting an inclusive learning environment. Every stakeholder also needs to know what is expected of everyone in the district and consequences for not following the rules. The goal of this policy is to ensure that students can attend school in a safe environment without fear of being bullied, taunted, or ostracized because of their differences. Without proper communication of these policies, the district's DEI runs the risk of being seen as punitive if students end up running afoul of policies they were not aware of. Thank you.
Thank you. And Lynn, it is your turn to answer.
Alrighty. Midland Public Schools takes the DEI curriculum, training, all of those workshops that we have started very seriously. And actually, MPS started a couple years ago with some of the anti-racism due to a video and some issues that were already starting in Midland Public Schools. We have found that teachers have been extremely receptive to some of the trainings, asking for more. And they've also been giving their input on how they can be made to feel more comfortable discussing these issues with their students when they arise and how to handle those issues, which is a good start because, as we all say, it is a difficult topic to discuss. It's difficult for many of us in Midland to admit that there is an anti-racism issue here. And I know that Midland Public Schools is taking it extremely seriously. the policies that they've put in place, the new vision, and also they have consequences for the students that are serious and that they are all to understand. It is not just a school issue. A lot of this needs to start at home. It needs to continue through the community, churches, what have you, from the time our children are young. We are working on changing the curriculum. In fact, we just discussed that the other day, and we hopefully that will bring some changes in the classroom as well. Thank you.
Thank you. For the third question, Kurt will answer first. So Kurt, what is your opinion on the relationship of the school board members to the superintendent?
That's a great question for me because I think it is entirely too cozy. It has been quite clear for those that pay attention to the board meetings that many of the board members come to the meeting, they hear the resolution, they raise their hand when they're asked, and they go home. And I don't think it's a bad thing if every one of those resolutions had nothing to be discussed, there were no points to be raised, and there were no alternatives to be discussed. But that's seldom the case in a real board. So as far as the relationship with the superintendent, it needs to be clear. And I don't think that it is today, that the superintendent reports to the board and not the reverse. And while I think it needs to always be professional and cordial, it also has to be at times a circumstance where hard questions are asked and difficult answers given. And I don't think that we have that. There's also a very difficult, which is in the website, circumstance where a mistake was made and our superintendent asked to have the minutes changed instead of what should have been done. In any corporation, that would not be tolerated.
Thank you. John, you may now answer.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. This is a very important relationship that exists within the district, and from my standpoint, I believe that the board acts in an advisory capacity and provides governance and direction for the school district, school superintendent, and its administration. It's very important that the clear lines be set and accountabilities be made. One thing that I don't feel that I have transparency into, and I don't really feel that transparency has been provided, is on how the superintendent and the administration are actually doing their jobs and what measures they're being held to and what accountabilities are actually there. It's not to say they don't exist. I just don't feel that in my observation of the board and the superintendent's relationship that those have been that they're particularly transparent. But generally speaking, I think that there needs to be a good relationship between the superintendent and the board and the MPS board, and they need to work together, but the board ultimately needs to hold the superintendent and the administration accountable on all matters. Thank you.
Thank you. Lynn, you may now answer.
Okay, I'll take my stab at this. And having worked with 3 superintendents, I believe the board does a very professional job of working with the superintendent. In answer to John's question, once a year, the superintendent is evaluated and many, many points are discussed, and the same evaluation goes to administration and teachers all the way down. So that information is available if someone is interested, and is presented at the one meeting a year that we do the evaluation of the superintendent. On my terms on the board, there has been discussion. There have been differences with board members. We as a board want to keep our discussions professional, kind. You can still disagree. And we do a lot of our work in the background in our subcommittees, which is only allowing 3 board members, the superintendent and that particular administrator or teacher or whoever the topic is about. Therefore, we report on those every month. A lot of work is done before the board meeting. And so that information has been disseminated. Minutes are available to the public. And so it may look like we are rubber stamping items, but there has been a lot of thought and a lot of discussion amongst each other. Thank you.
Thank you. Betsy, you now have the floor.
Thank you. This certainly is a discussion, near and dear to my heart after growing up in a home of 16 years where my father was superintendent of our school district. I come with the mindset that when working and collaborating with our superintendent, that it is okay to ask difficult questions. And a lot of that hard work and sweat and grit to come to a collective decision does happen behind the scenes, in the different committees of budget and curriculum and so on and so on. Trust and mutual respect, are absolutes when it comes to, that type of relationship. I would expect, anyone on the board to be as transparent with me as I plan to be as transparent with them. One area of improvement that I have noticed in the past, 6 years with my kids in the school district, areas of improvement are the increased visibility of the superintendent and upper administration. Many parents, community members do not know who he or who they are as a team. I think that puts more trust in a situation. I'm not here to bring in a personal agenda or railroad any type of the process, but we have to be a good listener, and we have to be visible and committed to, again, have every decision benefit MPS students and families, and be logical and articulate in the way that we communicate that to all of the stakeholders.
Thank you. Our fourth question goes first to John. John, as a possible board member, how would you advocate for the additional resources that schools will need to not only address the costs associated with the coronavirus, but also the resources that were needed before the pandemic?
All right. That's a great question. I think our district has done a very good job of managing its general fund balance. The general fund balance over the past number of years has been increasing, which has helped put MPS in what seems like a good position to weather the coronavirus storm and the pandemic storm, which is currently upon us. I think each year MPS's goal should be to manage its operating budget in a responsible manner, ensuring that the fund balance stays well above the required minimums by the state. That said, I think going forward, it's going to be important for us to keep managing that budget in a very responsible way. We need to make sure that we're compensating our staff appropriately because our teachers and building staff are on the front lines of this pandemic working with our children, and making sure that they are compensated in a fair way and kept safe is ultimately very important, in addition to keeping our most valued assets, our most valued resources, our children safe. Thank you.
Thank you. Lynn, you may now have the floor.
All righty. Can I have you repeat the question again, Julie?
Absolutely. As a possible board member, how would you advocate for the additional resources that that schools will need to not only address costs associated with the coronavirus, but also the resources that were needed before the pandemic?
It is a constant merry-go-round with school finances, and it was before COVID, is now. And what's really key is that we keep a very close eye on the finances, and we have a phenomenal finance department, and they work so hard. But not only them, it goes all the way down to the classroom and schools where they have made cuts and revisions, and especially now with the coronavirus. But also on top of all that, they've worked together and they really do communicate. the superintendent and the finance department. They work hard on this budget because we try to keep cuts as far away from the classroom as we can, because that's the number one is our kids and our staff. We also have to follow up on our marketing. It's sad to say, because back when my first kids were in school, you didn't worry about that kind of stuff. Michigan was funded differently. And we have to work closely with our legislators. We have to work together as a community and keep track of what's going on, because the way we are paid is so different now, the per student payment versus how it was before Proposal A. And most of our monies come from the state. So if our state's having a hard time, our monies are going to go down as well. And I have to compliment our administrative staff and our superintendent, because about 4 years ago, we were at 6% fund balance, and now we were up over 20. Thank you.
Thank you. Betsy, you may now answer.
Sure. Thank you. Truly, we are in the business of kids when it comes to being a school board member. Therefore, teachers, custodians, secretaries, etc., are truly the essential workers. We have to be so cautious and purposeful, even before the pandemic, in the way that we spent our valuable dollars that come in from the state and federal. We have, as Lynn noted, that healthy fund balance right now, which is absolutely wonderful. We still competitively are in the top percentiles in the nation and state, but we cannot abandon or take away from student support service programs such as counselors, mental health and wellness for students, faculty, and staff. These programs have to be in place. We have to pay our employees, value them, pay them competitively through great benefits and retirement packages. We have to offer diverse professional development opportunities where teachers and others can have a choice, in the way that they want to develop in the classroom. Regardless of the bond, we always, need more money to keep upgrades in our buildings and functionality in our grounds and safety for all the children and employees. But again, we're in a pandemic. We have changing times now where millions of dollars are going to PPE and online academic licensures like Canvas and others for hybrid and online learning. We have to be creative. We have to look for grants and other sources of revenue to come in, because everything is competitive in today's times.
Thank you. And Kurt, you now have the floor.
Thank you. One of the things that the school district does routinely is they complain about how the funding is allocated by the state. That's been true for a lot of years. To me, we have no development department that would actively find resources all the time, so that we don't have to say when something comes up that seems like it would be a great opportunity if only we had the money, but we anticipated that we might need some money, and we actually went out and looked for it, earned it. We have facilities that we don't take advantage of. We could rent space. I mean, there's just 100 things that could be done. And my experience with private enterprise tells me that if there was an area besides solid governance that we fall down on in the Midland Public Schools, it's this area of making sure that there's enough resources. The question started out with the virus, and my understanding is that much of the funding for the PPE, et cetera, came from elsewhere. So I think that's a good thing, but I'm out of time, but I think that there's so much more that could be done to make the Midland schools great, like they were, I think, 100 years ago when I was a student.
Thank you. The next question goes to Lynn to start. Lynn, how would you approach working with the different employee groups and eliciting their input before making policy decisions?
The best way is to have that open communication, and whether we set up small group meetings. I know the superintendent has his monthly lunch meetings when school is open with staff, and they have a teacher committee that they can give give input and get updates, just as we have the Parent Information Committee. Years ago, when I decided to run for the board, that was my key point, is that if you want to do what's best for your school, you have to have that communication with parents, staff, the community, retirees, everybody. Because if you don't reach out and either go to events, volunteer in the school, you need to be listening, taking input, and sharing that back with your fellow board members and your superintendent so that we can continually evolve. And people have different concerns. And so it is very important to just always be out there. It's a little more difficult now. I was asked that question the other day. How do you do this with COVID? It's very, very difficult. But once again, you talk to your neighbors who have the kids in the schools, or they're doing distance learning at home, and follow up and do your best to know what's going on. Thank you.
Thank you. Betsy, you now have the floor.
Thank you. Could you repeat the question just so I can answer all parts, please?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
How would you approach working with different employee groups and eliciting their input before making policy decisions?
One way I learned this quite quickly in being on the ground floor is during the pandemic, I volunteered through United Way to ride on a Midland Public School bus and distribute meals to MPS students at various locations. So talk about being able to have your boots to the ground and work with custodians, cafeteria, bus driver to truly listen. Listening is an undervalued skill. When we're speaking, we're not listening. So again, all of those, nonverbal behaviors and things we're taught when you're young are really applicable into being an active community member. Doing our homework, getting out there in the community and asking those difficult questions, or just being a part of something, volunteering during, food giveaways or extracurricular events. So you can be right in the midst of everyone that you're trying to understand more about. Having the pulse of the community by great networking skills and attending things, and always following up, answering your email, continuing the conversation. Don't pretend that we have all of the answers. We have so many experts in our community. Many of them are parents, professional parents in this, school district. So reaching out to them. Overall, if we pretend that we have all the answers and we sit together and try to set policy based on that, we become way too narrow-minded. And that is not a goal of MPS. A goal of MPS is to be diverse and inclusive. Thank you.
Thank you. Kurt, you now have the floor.
Well, I have to say that I think Betsy's comments about listening and the pulse of the community are outstanding, and I couldn't agree more. One of the things that the Midland Public Schools is absolutely against is having the board speak with teachers or speak with parents. And I was told that by the superintendent. So my suggestion has been and is, like with many of the companies that I work with, that the board members take the opportunity to speak with teachers regularly, once a month, twice a month, because you don't want the information from your employees filtered by your administration. You really want to know what those folks want to say. And if you don't do it yourself, you will probably get the filtered version. The companies that I work with that do that very well, I think that we retain more employees because of that. They appreciate the fact that they've been listened to, and it's not just been a placating sort of listening where they say, thank you for coming to the board meeting, and then they pay no attention to what was said. So I think it's critical to do it the other way.
Thank you. And John, you now have the floor.
Can you repeat the question, please?
Absolutely. So how would you approach working with the different employee groups and eliciting their input before making policy decisions?
Okay, thank you. So as I've said before, I believe that the role of the school board is to provide oversight of the MPS administration while providing overall governance on the overall direction of our school system. MPS and the school board should help set priorities jointly, and the board should work with the superintendent to measure progress toward those goals. That said, the superintendent is not wholly accountable. There are many other layers of the school system who are responsible for actually making things happen in the buildings every day with our students. I think it's extremely important that the board have a relationship with other MPS stakeholders, including association members and other district employees. Transparency is extremely important, and I believe the board needs communication with all stakeholders so that we can be the best district possible. Keeping lines of communication open and developing relationships based on mutual trust and respect are essential. And we need to ensure that the board is regularly communicating and asking for input from these other employee groups and making sure that we are getting that feedback. And making sure we are getting that feedback is critical to make sure that we're operating as efficiently as possible as a board. Thank you.
Thank you. This concludes the time available for questions. Thank you to all of you for your thoughtful responses. Now we've come to your 1-minute closing statements. At this time, you may wish to address any of the questions or your comments to wrap up your positions and opinions on the various aspects of serving on the board of MPS. For the closing statements, we will begin with Kurt.
Thank you. I would say that the most important part about this evening from my standpoint is to recognize that if you're going to be a board member, you need to attend board meetings. And I think that if you were to look at the records of people who were on the board but didn't appear, how can you have an input if you're not there? The next thing is that the number of comments about what is done behind the scenes. Unfortunately, I think that's very true, and that there is very little transparency and very little debate that would be helpful for those in the community to hear. And the last thing is, I would challenge all of the candidates to answer the question: do you really want your superintendent to ask that they change the minutes to a board meeting? Is that something that you really want out of your leadership? Thank you.
Thank you. And now, John, you may do your closing statement.
Ooh, we're changing it up. Okay. Thank you again to the Midland AAUW and the Midland League of Women Voters. I appreciate the time to have spent time with you and the rest of the candidates. I have no axis to grind in this race. I want to be a part of the school board because I'm interested in helping, and I'm passionate about schools and our children and making change. Midland's been a great place to raise a family, and our community is blessed to have so many resources available to us. MPS has an exemplary record for student performance, and our teachers are second to none. The world, however, is changing rapidly, and there are a number of things I believe are important to the students of our district, including, as I said previously, closing the achievement gap, ensuring the mental health and wellness of our students, ensuring facilities across the district are equitable, and making sure our district continues to be laser focused with its DEI plan. If elected, I hope to advance these issues in our schools so that we're providing all of our students with the skills necessary to succeed in the world once they've left at MPS. Thank you.
Thank you. Lynn, you now have the floor.
I too thank the AAUW and League of Women Voters for having us here tonight so that you can get a little idea of what each of us are interested in and our passion for serving the schools. If I am elected, I will continue to constantly have communication with the public, with teachers. And yes, I do spend lots of time in the schools and talking to teachers and staff and during my volunteering and after hours. Also, I really believe we have one of the best schools in the state. We have great administrators who put in hundreds of hours. And during COVID, that's been quite apparent. We have school districts that are looking to Midland Public Schools for guidance because we have done a remarkable job with a challenging budget and a small administrative staff. And from my feedback, that teachers and students are having a good year in the classroom so far. Thank you.
Thank you. And now Betsy.
Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to showcase my objectives as well as passion and dedication to MPS. I am committed to providing strategic guidance, asking questions, being visible, ambitious, and innovative in everything that I am a part of and that this role entails. I believe in the potential of all students and will work tirelessly for teachers to have the resources they need to ensure MPS students keep writing their own stories, so to speak, in their own unique personal excellence. I will ensure progressive action towards safety, students' socio-emotional health, anti-racism training, and seamless learning from home to face-to-face. The time is now to embrace change and give back to this district and community. I am ready to get to work. I appreciate and value your vote on November 3rd.
Thank you. Our thanks to the board candidates Lynne Baker, Betsy Deagle, John Hatfield, and Kurt Yackey for participating in this forum. The Midland branch of AAUW and the Midland Area League of Women Voters appreciate that you have given voters the opportunity to hear your conversations about issues facing Midland Public Schools. Look for our second forum where we ask the three candidates vying for 2 6-year positions on the Midland Public School Board. Voters, I remind you once again that the election is on Tuesday, November 3rd. We would also like to extend a very special thank you to the people who have made this program possible, including the MCTV staff and Catherine Redwine. Thanks also to AAUW Midland branch members Jody Gardner and Suzanne Ostahowski, to Carol Swinehart and Catherine Redwine from the Midland League of Women Voters, and Kim Steinke, Terry Townley, and Jane Worth, who are members of both organizations. Please pass the word to your friends and neighbors that their votes are important. Thank you for watching. Please remember this motto: it's my vote, I will be heard. Good evening.